The elevation of Kevin Petullo was not on my bingo card when the 2025 season started, with most, if not all, of my concerns stemming from the mistake made in 2023 regarding individuals with little to no play calling experience. Is is this the third time the charm in which we don't see another meltdown? Let's go over the latest on this discussion. Hello, NFL and Eagles fans alike. Lindy Endzone is back for the touchdown, taking the lead for our Philadelphia Eagles, one video at a time. And while this past season was another Captain Obvious moment for those with high expectations, we also have to maintain being realistic in what we thought the Eagles were capable of fresh off a Super Bowl victory. While multiple storylines have created reasoning instead of excuse making that's tied to the team's woes, what stayed constant was the predictability of how the team's offense performed on a weekly basis, playing in spite of the top 10 defensive performances consistently until teams eventually caught up to their limitations from an offensive standpoint. Philly is set to make things change for the better that we hope of as fans, with the hires of Sean Mannion for offensive coordinator and Josh Grizzard as the passing game coordinator. Um, One of the biggest takeaways so far from a staff standpoint is really whether or not Kevin Petullo stays in the building. Obviously, he's not going to be retaining his previous role as pass game coordinator with the hire of Grizzard. So he's going to have that going forward. But I wanted to I wanted to get into a little more about this. So let's start with Sean. Just 2 years removed playing in the league as a former third round pick, he has learned in the offensive systems of Sean McVay, Kevin Stefanski, Kevin O'Connell, Clint Kubiak, as well as two of those guys, not including the one I didn't mention, which was head coach Matt LaFleur and Sean McVay, come from the Kyle Shanahan coaching tree, which after watching what Kyle did with a absolutely depleted 49ers team that we embarrassingly lost to, don't want to think about that. Um, we should have some intrigue on the knowledge of Sean and what he has acquired over the years between playing and coaching. Um, what what it also reminds me of at the same time is I remember when we had our linebackers coach Nick Rollis, who was also young at the time. I think he was maybe 29, 30 years old. And one of the going conversations around the league and in the fan space was uh, the fact that he was around the age of these players, and it made it a lot easier in a way for him to connect to the guys. So my expectation here is that Sean Mannion and maybe Grizzard to a degree are going to have um, that ability in some capacity, the way Nick Rallis did. So, however, for Mannion, because he does not have any play calling experience, they brought in Josh, who spent 1 year doing so uh, with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Um, wh- they were kind of a letdown, and the ongoing story there is that he was potentially a scapegoat as well. You can you can debate that if you want. Um, but I do believe it was said that Baker Mayfield was having some MVP style football games early in the year until they went 8 and 9 and lost to teams that they really had no business losing to. So I wanted to dive deeper into this and try to connect some dots for the Eagles offense. Some of the top priorities that the Eagles like to have a high standard of is having long sustaining drives that finish in touchdowns. And this past season was not the case in the slightest outside of a couple of games in which painted a picture of the defense controlling the field to build momentum for the offense rather than the offense itself starting strong. To which you can argue maybe there was games where it was a little bit different when you include the first 15 scripted plays that we've all come to talk about, and I forget what season it is, but I almost vividly remember that outside of those 15 scripted plays, it's just a complete blank. It's gonna bother me that I don't remember, but nonetheless, um, as the saying goes, when we talk about it, defense wins championships, and we certainly seen that in Super Bowl 59. Um, and so the connection to the Eagles this past season, especially, you had a top 5 defense. They were 5th in the league in points allowed, which is just under 20 points a game. I think they were 19.1. And on the opposite side, you know, as we watched this season unfold, it was certainly a letdown. And anytime the Eagles are not, I'd say maybe average, but they could have used a little more production out of that. Um, I would say they probably would have had a better offense if they hovered around eh, 10 to 13-ish in the league, but this past season they were 19th, which which doesn't help, it doesn't help your defense. And we've said that for game in and game out that, this offense is just leaving Vic Fangio, hung out to dry. It was it was certainly ridiculous. So what I wanted to do is add a few more stats here that obviously they do not spell success in points. Um, and some of those that stuck out to me in looking into it was on the surface, they were bottom 10 in rush yards per attempt, starting field position, and total yards. So when you talk about starting field position, when you're almost backed up in your own territory too far all the time, and you have a offense that's going 3 and out and 3 and out, and maybe 4 plays and they have to punt, or 5 plays and they have to punt, you don't get that far down the field, or you're in a situation where you may get an automatic first down on a defensive penalty. And when you're the void of rhythm, you get into those situations, and it just doesn't help the team as a whole. So we can get carried away with statistics that can be misleading when void of context or other supporting stats, such as this. The Eagles this year as we have come to know, they're always usually good when it comes to time of possession. So this year they were 11th, and their time of possession, I think, was about a half hour. So they would get, I think it was 30 minutes and 50 some odd seconds, something like that. Uh, Although it's just outside of the top 10, it doesn't help that they could not sustain drives, let alone maybe get into field goal range a little more if you're in a position that you're so predictable that you can't get into the red zone. Um, so as I'm talking about that, one of the one of the telltales to me is that we talk about the money down, like you gotta have it. You gotta have it on third down. They were 24th. 24th. So if you are the eighth worst team in terms of third down and moving the football, do you expect to win many football games? Because, you know, despite how dominant our defense has been in certain situations, they're only going to hold teams from scoring for so long. And if your offense just goes out there and puts stinkers on the field time and time again when they have the ball, you're going to lose at some point. So, I mean, you have to clean that up. You just have to. Um, but when we talk about the red zone, they were number one in the league, 71%. It was 70 and a half. They were almost 71% in red zone efficiency. And where I think Josh Grizzard is going to come in is to try and pick up the pieces where the Eagles struggled most with the stats that I just named off. As the Buccaneers were top 10 in those areas, such as on the money down on third down, the Bucks were 10th. So you're top 10 on third down, you're moving that football. They were ninth in average drive time, which is good. So the way I like to look at average drive time is that you have to have some breaks in between for the defense to catch their breath. And um, as we have come to know over the years, that's been one of the Eagles' strong suits is when they go on these long sustaining drives. You got 10 plays 55 yards or 12 plays 72 yards. That's that sort of thing. That that those are situations where you're giving the defense a lot of rest. Not only are you giving them rest, if you cap off those drives with touchdowns, that does take a lot of pressure off of them and it puts more pressure on the opposing offense so that they may not be able to be in positions where they can afford to cut time off of the clock. You're speeding up their inner clock that that they're trying to catch up to you and maybe win this football game. And we didn't see enough of that from the Eagles in that regard. So the Buccaneers, in terms of starting field position as well, they were 12th. So, I mean, I don't want to get very extensive in this video because it could be a lot longer. So I'm going to end on the grounds of saying that this will certainly be a work in progress. But in my opinion, it may be another gamble. And for a team that still has a open Super Bowl window, not to say that no one is learning from their mistakes or whatnot, but the affordability to do so, is getting a lot tighter. And going forward, the Eagles are trying to reclaim that victorious glory of getting back to the promised land, and reclaiming their spot as one of the best teams in football. And if you're going to be inconsistent like this on a year to year basis, season after season, and a different coordinator, whether it's through termination or them getting an opportunity to have a promotion for themselves with the head coaching job, and other staff members leaving too. It's just eh, you know the sustainability factor. You gotta have you gotta have something a little more stable in place. Um, Not to mention other questions that could affect what we see in terms of change on the field for 2026. Not that I'm going to expect much change because, as we know, it's still Nick Sirianni's offense, and how much autonomy is there going to be, how much innovation or evolution there's going to be, um, you know whether they're going to break Jalen Hurts out of some of his shells in regards to what he is or isn't comfortable doing. Because at some point, you have to figure out ultimately what your quarterback is made of. And, you know, the versatility part of his game is going to be even more important the older he gets, because the athleticism is slowly going to be taken away from him. And when we've talked about it over the offseason here, and the reports of him not wanting to run anymore, this, that, and the third, you remove one of the strongest suits of his game, such as we seen his reluctancy to run in this season, he becomes a completely different quarterback. Such as the fact that in terms of QBR, to not mistaken it with passer rating, Jalen Hurts wasn't very good this year. Uh, Outside of that, he only threw so many interceptions. It was less than 10. He only had 5 picks. He threw 26 touchdowns. He was only a 55. His QBR was only a 55. That's just above average. So this is a quarterback that was just Super Bowl MVP the season prior, and he comes into this season and he's barely above average. That's that's not the standard we're looking for. So, outside of that, and we also have roster questions to figure out. What is eventually gonna go on with AJ Brown? The looming Lane Johnson retirement, is it gonna happen or is it not? The free agents that could potentially be leaving the building. Reed Blankenship, Jalen Phillips, extension opportunities for Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter, Dallas Goddard, one of our offensive weapons, where two tight ends behind Dallas aren't going to contribute anywhere. Excuse me, they're not going to contribute anywhere near as much as Dallas was able to. And then we have to think about the draft at the same time. So I mean, ooh, yeah, you can show optimism about these hires, absolutely, because like I said, they're on the younger side of their careers so far. They have a lot of learning and growth to do in their positions, and that's good for them in terms of their evolution. They come from great offensive systems. It looks good on paper, but at a certain point, it's going from paper to practice. And again, for a team that still has an open Super Bowl window. We just won the previous Super Bowl. it's a very, very tight situation, very tight. So I guess we still have yet to see what's going to happen. But nonetheless, be sure to check out the rest of Hardcore Sports for a huge array of content. Um, Thank you all very much uh, once more for being a part of my humble return and one of my one of my detailed videos, putting them back on the channel and still knowing that there is viewership there and that there is appreciation there and um, being added to Hardcore Sports. um, Very humbling, very humbling, and you know it keeps me, it keeps me having a driven mind. So thank you, everybody. Um, Thank you for your support, and I will see you all next time. Take care now.